All right, so I titled this "Desperate and Prideful," and honestly, I came up with this story as something that I wanted to share in light of just reading a kids devotional, my kids. And so there's a Jesus storybook Bible, and it's a great little resource if you don't do something around the dinner table with your kids, if you have kids. Um, it's a great little resource to just pull that sucker out once or twice a week and read a story connected with your dinner time and talk about it together, but it connects all these stories back with Jesus. Anyhow, the story that we were reading was about Naaman, and I thought that, this is a really timely one. And then I didn't even realize how timely it would be with my week and how my week played out. But I think you guys will appreciate the teaching. So I'm going to start just with reading it, give a couple insights, and then we'll talk about it together. But it's 2 Kings chapter 5. 2 Kings chapter 5, 1 to 14. It says this: Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master and in high favor. And in high favor, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was a mighty man of valor, but he was a leper. Now the Syrians, on one of their raids, had carried off a little girl from the land of Israel, and she worked in the service of Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "Would that my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria. He would cure him of his leprosy." So Naaman went in and told his Lord thus, and so spoke the girl from the land of Israel. And the king of Syria said, "Go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel." So he went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, which read, "When this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you Naaman, my servant, that you may cure him of his leprosy." And when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God to kill and to make alive? That this man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? Only consider and see how he is seeking a quarrel with me." It's like, this dude's trying to start a fight because I don't have that power to heal someone. That's what the king of Israel says. But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent to the king saying, "Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come now to me, that he may know that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and stood at the door of Elisha's house. And Elisha sent a messenger to him saying, "Go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean." But Naaman was angry and went away, saying, "Behold, I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call upon the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the place and cure the leper." Okay, are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. But his servants came near and said to him, "My father, it is a great word the prophet has spoken to you. Will you not do it? Has he actually said to you, 'Wash and be clean'?" So he went down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. All right, so you get this guy who's commander of the army of the king of Syria. Super powerful guy, a military leader, but he has leprosy. Anybody know what leprosy is, or able to describe what this very famous ailment was? You can unmute yourself or type it. Anybody know what leprosy was?
Was it like a bumps, like a skin disease, right?
Yep, like a skin disease, and your skin would turn white, and eventually different parts of your body could start falling off. So you could like lose fingers and parts of your skin, your feet, toes, just start dropping off. Eventually it would kill you. But it was highly contagious. And if you had leprosy, you had to cry out unclean to everyone if you were going to come into a town, because if you were to get near anyone, they could potentially get leprosy and it would kill them too, be a death sentence, right? It's like social distancing to another level. It was like, this sucker would definitely kill you, and you don't want to lose fingers and toes and then die from this thing. I mean, it was a really big deal. So here's Naaman. He's super powerful, military leader, wealthy, from a nation who had taken over Israel, but now he had leprosy. I got to tell you, just to give you a little more idea on the story here, Naaman's angry because of the way that the prophet treated him. He sort of expected to get a ton of attention, but when he showed up, the prophet didn't even greet him at the door. And then this guy Naaman expected instantaneous cure, that somebody was going to fix him right away. Instead, he was told that he had to do something. He had to dip in a muddy river, in the muddy Jordan River. And the rivers that were in his country, in Damascus, Abana and Pharpar, they were fresh and clear and beautiful. So he's like, if I'm going to get cleared from my leprosy, it's not going to be from the dirty Jordan River. Not going to happen. It's going to be the crystal clear waters of my own country. We're the superior country. We've taken over your people. I'm going to come dip in this dirty, nasty, grimy, clay-colored water. And so he's sort of disgusted, and he's ticked off and wheels off his chariot, departs in a cloud of dust. And mind you, he had brought a bunch of money too, because he wanted to sort of pay his way toward getting healed. 10 talents of silver would have been like $20,000. And then he had a measure, likely 6,000 shekels weight would be like $60,000 in addition to silver and gold. So he had like $80,000 he brought along, and all these garments and all that kind of stuff. And he's just really frustrated and ticked off that he shows up. The king's like, I can't help him. Gets sent off to this obscure prophet. This prophet doesn't even come out of his house. He sends somebody else to come out. And so he feels super disrespected as a powerful guy, a military leader, someone with a lot of money, a lot of clout, a lot of reputation, and this no-name prophet in this foolish, small country with a muddy river sends out somebody else to tell him to go off in the River Jordan and dip 7 times. He won't even come out and greet him. So he feels very, I think, disrespected at the time, Naaman does. But it leads me to this interesting thought. I think money means nothing when you face your own mortality, right? Like, you can't buy your way to fixing yourself. And here's a guy that seemingly had everything, right? I mean, he's powerful. He's got a name. He's in a powerful country. They'd taken over another group of people. He brought all kinds of money with him, really cool clothing, whatever, to be able to buy his way into healing, and thought he was important. Yet he's also very desperate here. He's reluctant, but he's desperate. And there's something that happens when we're faced with our own mortality. This past week, some of you might have seen my post. have a really good friend, part of Creo Collective. If you don't know Creo, NRC is part of Creo. Basically 130, 140 NRCs, people that are doing stuff like what we're doing all over the country, the globe. Eric, son, my friend, is part of Creo, doing similar things like us in Hong Kong. And Eric's a young guy, 4 kids. His wife had a brain tumor. She's had 4 strokes. He's been her caretaker. Amazing guy. He would get on all of our Creo calls. Wednesdays, I do coaching for a bunch of these churches and micro church leaders, and he would hop on at noon Eastern time, which was midnight Hong Kong time. This guy would get on at midnight, pitch black outside, sitting on a rooftop in Hong Kong, smoking a cigar every week, talking about Jesus, laughing hysterically, thinking about how they could be good news to the city of Hong Kong. Amazing guy, really brought light and positivity and the love of Jesus and a message of grace all the time. And he didn't make the call Wednesday. And when he didn't make the call Wednesday, and he's always on these calls, when he didn't make the call Wednesday, I'm like, where's Eric? And you miss him because he brought this real like energy and fun. It was a lot of fun. So I sent him a message and I said, hey man, you all right? I didn't see you on the call. To which I get a response, and the response said, hey, this is Matthias, Eric's son. Eric died. My dad died. Had a heart attack and died. And I, I had to just like pull over on the side of the road and just process what was going on. Here's a guy that is an amazing man of God, making a difference. Really incredible light. His wife's got multiple strokes and brain tumor stuff going on. And he's her caretaker and taking care of their 4 kids, and he just died. And I was just devastated, absolutely devastated and shocked, and feel a great sadness for the family, for his wife, for his kids. I'll send you a link to the GoFundMe, by the way, if you want to help him, because I'm really worried about what's going to happen with his wife and kids. But all that got me thinking, as I'm thinking about this Naaman story, right? About our own mortality and our own, the fact that life is like a vapor. James says we're here for a little while and we're gone, and we tend to forget that, and we're not struck with that until we get a diagnosis like Naaman did. You got leprosy, you're going to die. Or a friend dies, you go to a funeral. Like something dramatic happens that causes you to really take account of your life and think about what matters, and think about the fact that we are not going to be here forever. And so you get this guy Naaman, who is sort of self-dependent, felt very important, very wealthy, very powerful, had a name, expected certain things when he showed up in town, but yet he had a real desperation at the same time. Then you've got another character in the story. This one's really fascinating to me. This is the one that really inspired the teaching, honestly, is you've got a little girl. Now, this little girl was stolen. She was taken from her family during a raid when Syria came in. You've got this little Israeli girl that was carried off in the raid. Now, this made me think of Afghanistan. It's fresh, right? You've got people literally like trying to jump on the side of a plane that's taking off, falling off the plane to their death, trying to escape the Taliban as they're taking over the place. And you've got women, particularly women and little girls whose life is never going to be the same. They'll be covering themselves and, you know, not having the same freedoms that they had before. Now, I want you to imagine you've got this commander that comes in, takes over, steals you from your family. How do you feel? Do you love the guy? Do you love these people that have ripped you away from everyone and everything that you know? Because here you have this little girl that was taken in a raid, and when she sees Naaman's condition, she feels compassion for Naaman. I don't know about you, but that hit me in such a deep way. And I thought, I don't know, I don't know that I always have compassion for people that have done something that hurts me or the people that are close to me. In fact, many of us have bitterness or judgment, or I want them to get what they deserve. Um, you know, we feel like we really desperately want justice more than anything, and so we scream for justice, which is a good justice is a good thing. But compassion and love and grace towards somebody that had ripped you away and taking you in a raid, you get this girl that is offering hope to this guy who has leprosy. That's a military commander of the other people. And so that greatly inspired me. And I started thinking about the love of God who shows compassion toward people that are not in the right, but people that are in the wrong. Because there's nothing sort of like lovable about Naaman. You got this guy who uh, is like an oppressor who comes in and takes you, but he's also arrogant, and he's also sort of cocky and wealthy and feels important and all that kind of stuff. And so you've got a character that you're not particularly excited about. You don't really think he's a great guy, like you want to save him, but yet you've got this girl that has such the heart of God that she sees him in his desperate condition. She sees him in his leprosy, and she thinks about someone back in her hometown, a prophet that might be able to provide hope and healing to this guy that has hurt her, that's an oppressor. And I just find that fascinating. I want that sort of heart, that when people have wronged me or mistreated me, that I desperately want to see good. And think about that. Jesus says, do good to those who hurt you, bless those who persecute you. Jesus from the cross saying, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. How many of us, like, maybe we could fake it? Maybe we could fake it and be like, yeah, God, help these people that have mistreated me, so that we feel better about ourselves or pious. But how many of us really mean it? We're like, God, I want that person to get a promotion. I want good things to happen for them. I want to do things that are a blessing to these people that have harmed me or hurt me or put me down or let me down or made my life difficult. I want good things to happen to them. But to have that sort of mindset is to genuinely have the heart of God, what this girl did, and wanting to seek restoration and healing for this guy. Really remarkable. But then I want you to think about the bizarre kind of stuff that happens here. Bizarre kind of stuff, because you've got what the world values. What are some of the things that people tend to value or see somebody as important? Someone's important because why? How do many people judge importance or value? Money, money, fame. Yep, for sure. Money, fame, position, title. Okay. You're in like a superior country to other than those other people that you see as beneath you. Popularity, having things. There you go. Okay, so Naaman's all those things. He's rich. He has a lot of stuff. He's very popular. He has position, title, authority, all that kind of stuff. So you would look at Naaman as being sort of up, is important, as being one of the people that we would see as valuable, right? But then you have the way that God works in all this stuff: rank, authority, outward appearance, position might matter to us, but God loves to use the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. So he uses a slave girl. He uses a muddy Jordan River as opposed to these like really nice crystal clear ones. Right? It's like God picking the East River or something up in New York. Like, you're gonna go bathe in that sucker, and it's really nasty. And then he uses this obscure prophet who doesn't even come out to greet him. He's, I don't know, maybe like an introverted prophet staying inside of his house. It's like, I'm not even gonna bother with this important dude. You go out and tell him to just go bathe in a muddy river. No money. The prophet doesn't even want his money. And so God does these sort of bizarre and like foolish things to shame the wise and the important and the great and the mighty. And God's just like, I don't even play like that, Naaman. Like, you think you're important, you think you're great, but think about this. Here's sort of the value that I want to get across. God resists the proud, gives grace to the humble. And you've got this prideful, self-important person who's at the same time desperate and dying. He's like a walking corpse. And God has to sort of lower him and help him to see his own desperation. It reminds me of the passage in Revelation, talks about one of the churches that they say that they see themselves as wealthy. We don't really need anything. We're good. We're fine. We're okay. And it says of that church, you don't realize that you are wretched and poor and pitiable and blind and naked. And come to me, because I'll heal you. I'll give you life. But we don't want to see ourselves that way. Here's Naaman dying of leprosy, right? You've got a death sentence. You're dying of terminal cancer. And still at the same time, you're like, I don't need anything. I'm good. I'm fine. I'm all right. I don't need your help. There's this pride in us that doesn't want to admit our own brokenness. And this is another fascinating thing about this story. This story has so many layers to it. Another fascinating thing about it is that Naaman is so darn stubborn. He's got leprosy, but he still feels like the Jordan is beneath him. Going to this prophet that doesn't think he's important is sort of beneath him. In fact, he doesn't go to the prophet that the slave girl recommends first. First, he reaches out to the king. And then the prophet finds out about it, says something to the king, and then he ends up going to the prophet, right? So he's sort of reluctant. And then after he sort of gives the prophet Elisha the finger and starts to take off in the other direction, then his guys are like, wait, maybe you should try what he said. And then he actually bathes in a Jordan 7 times, and his skin is totally cleansed and he's healed. And so I think one of the beautiful things about this is that God doesn't just forgive us and heal us and give us grace because we're full of this unshakable, great, godly faith, like 80% faith, baby. Like, we are super full of faith. And because I have this certain level of faith, then God blessed me. No, it's like Naaman had very little reluctant faith. And God just kept going after him. And even in his pride and arrogance, where he's like, I don't need anything. And then his guys are like, you should probably just try it. And God still heals him. And I think that says something about God, that God is not quick to like turn his head away from us. He's not quick to write us off. He's not quick to reject us, but he even pursues people whose faith is like really low and reluctant and stubborn. And I love that because it gives great hope to me, because I can oftentimes be stubborn. I can oftentimes count on myself, right? Lean on my own understanding think that I got this. I'm good. I'll be all right. I got myself covered. I can fix it. How many of you are like that? I'm good. I got it. I can fix this. Do you need anything? Nah, I'm all right. I'm cool. Right? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. Deep down inside, you're rotting. You feel like garbage. You're hurting. You're tired. You're burnt out. You're depressed. You're struggling, but you don't want to admit it. You want to feel like you're on top. You want to feel like you can fix it. You want to feel like you're strong. But at the end of the day, you're dying of leprosy spiritually, just like Naaman, maybe physically too. You're just struggling. And we don't want to admit our own inability. We don't want to admit our own struggle and our own challenge. If you think about it, we can be all three characters at different times in our journeys. Right? We can be like Naaman. How many of you related to Naaman when you heard the story? Anybody? Anybody relate to Naaman? Anybody feel like you've got some real problems in your life, but you don't want to admit it? You got some real challenges, but you're trying to fix it with your own resources, right? You got some real issues and challenges, but you especially don't want to humble yourself or learn from people that you feel like you should be teaching. Sometimes our kids even are the ones that are going to break through to us. Amazing. How many of you relate to the little slave girl here? How many of you do you feel like God might want to put you in a position to bless someone that's hurt you? To do good or show kindness or maybe even bring healing to someone else? How many of you might feel like God wants to free you from your own bitterness so that you can experience life yourself, but then even pass it on to other people? Or maybe, how about relating to Elisha as someone sent on behalf of God that maybe you're even don't even want to come out of your house to deal with the Naamans, but God is giving you this opportunity to bless other people and bring hope and healing. When you hear about it, you can do something. I think we can probably relate to all three of these characters at different points in our journey. But I think the winner of this whole story or parable, it's a real story, real history here. But the winner of this story here is who? Who wins at the end of this thing? Who wins? You can speak up or put it in the chat. Who wins? I'm waiting for you. Who comes out on top? Who gets the trophy? Who wins? There you go. God wins. Good. Naaman wins too, doesn't he? God wins. Naaman wins. For sure, Naaman wins. And he wins by being a dead man. He wins by being a dead man physically and spiritually, because Jesus raises the dead, forgives sinners, even very reluctant ones. He continues to pursue them and put people around them that go, you could just like go with what God says this one time. Go ahead. What's it going to hurt? I know that river's super muddy, but why not? Right? And so the winner is Naaman for being a dead man. And it's us for admitting our own death, our own inability, our own struggle, our own weakness, because Jesus came for sinners. Jesus came not for the healthy, but for sick. Jesus came not for the righteous, but for the unrighteous. Jesus came to raise the dead. What do you have to do in order to be raised? You got to be dead, right? In order to be healed, you got to be sick. See, You just come by admitting that you're Naaman. And Jesus heals the Naamans of the world, like you and I. But yeah, the girl wins too, right? Because is maintaining bitterness and holding on to hatred for your oppressor, is that a win? Seeking vengeance, is that a win? Watching somebody be healed. And what happens to Naaman later? He goes, this is my God now. Like I'm with him now. And he experiences total transformation because what he saw, even though he was super reluctant, even though he was super arrogant and prideful and dragging his feet and thought he was above it all. And yet at the end of the day, God uses this little girl, the foolish things of the world, a captive girl, to transform this guy and change his whole story. It's amazing. And I think in the same way, God wants to do that for you. Wants to do that for me. Wants to use people like us. Wants to use the foolish things of the world and wants to save the foolish people of the world and even the ones that think they're strong. God loves to show them that they're weak, and yet he came to save the broken, to raise the dead, to forgive sinners. Amazing. I'm gonna leave it now and just open up some Q&A around this. But first, let me pray, and then anyone who has some questions or thoughts around this story, I'd love to dialogue with you. I'll put it on gallery after I pray. God, I just thank you for a story where I can truly relate to each character here. I have felt very much like Naaman. While I have great need, I don't want to admit it. When I feel weak, I want to depend on my own resources or my own understanding. And I can be very reluctant, and yet you pursue me. And I think we got to look at people that are in our lives, as we're living out everyday life, the same way that this little girl looked at Naaman. We can't write off the people around us of going, oh, he's cocky, she's arrogant, they think they're better than me. We've got to look at these people and say, they got needs like I do, and feel a real compassion for the people around us. God, just take away our lack of compassion. Help us to be freed from our arrogance and pride. Help us instead to see that you just work for your favor in all of these people's stories. Elisha, the young girl, Naaman. You work all this together for the good. And there's, even though it's messy, I mean, Naaman's got leprosy, the girl's in captivity. Elisha is looked at as sort of, off to the side, obscure prophet. And yet you love to work in all these scenarios. And I just love the complexity and beauty of how you're weaving all this stuff together and all of our lives and all of our stories. So thank you for that, and help us to learn, help us to affect the way that we look at people and the world around us. Strip us of our pride and give us a genuine compassion. We love you. Amen.